The Story in the Engine was my most anticipated episode of Doctor Who Season 2, so did it live up to my expectations? Okay, so the 5th episode of Doctor Who Season 2, The Story in the Engine, has recently aired, and if you've seen any of my recent videos before this, you'll know that this was my most anticipated episode of this season, so I went in with some quite high expectations for this particular episode. So with The Story in the Engine, did it live up to my expectations, did it meet my expectations, or were my expectations too high? Before we get into that review, I just want to mention, in celebration of Doctor Who Season 2 airing, I currently have a discount on my Patreon for 50% off your first month of any paid tier on my Patreon page when you use code SEASON2. So I'll make sure to have the Patreon linked in the description down below, but that's just a little discount I'm running in celebration of Doctor Who Season 2. And without further ado, let's get back into the review. Okay, so this episode opens with Omo telling the story of him meeting the Doctor in the past, which gives us a sense of this connection that Omo and the Doctor already have, and you can get a better sense of that if you read the prequel story written by Anua Ellams, which I read before watching this episode, and it just gives a stronger connection between the Doctor and Omo and how come they already know each other before this episode starts. So if you've not read that yet, I'd definitely recommend reading it, even if you've obviously already seen the episode, which I assume you will have done before watching this video. We're also obviously still continuing this season's story of trying to get Belinda home, with the Doctor choosing Lagos, Nigeria due to its large communications network, and even though Belinda still wants to get home, it makes sense that she's happy for the Doctor to stay here for a while, given that it's clear how much this place, particularly Omo's palace, means to the Doctor since regenerating into this new body. Unfortunately though, this does mean we don't get much of Belinda in this episode, as she understandably wants to let the Doctor have this time on his own, but Belinda's absence is definitely felt in this episode, particularly given that we didn't get much of her or even the Doctor last episode. Obviously, like I mentioned, the setting of this episode is Lagos, Nigeria, and it's particularly set in a barber shop due to the importance of storytelling in this particular establishment in this culture, which I think was a really nice focus of this episode. I also appreciate that when the Doctor tells his story, he doesn't tell an exciting adventure that we haven't seen before, which they could have easily done just as an excuse for like a Dalek cameo or something like that, but instead he tells a human story about Belinda, which is nice because of how little we see of her in this episode, like I mentioned, but it also gives us a nice Mrs. Flood cameo for this episode, which is a lot better and less forced than in previous episodes, where she just kept showing up for the last couple of minutes. Instead, this is just like a fleeting moment where she's walking past Belinda, who obviously already knows who she is, as she's apparently going to collect some pills from the doctors or from the hospital. Obviously, one of the big characters in this episode is the Barber, and it's clear that they probably expected the audience to assume that he was going to be the Anansi, or that the Anansi was going to make an appearance at some point in this episode, because I remember when we saw the spider in the trailer, we were thinking the spider might be the Anansi, and I think as it was getting closer to this episode, we did think that maybe he could be the Anansi instead. But obviously, they were clearly expecting us to assume that already, and still, after it's revealed that he isn't the Anansi, I did almost expect more of a reveal of who he would actually be, such as like a Time Lord with his name being the Barber or something along those lines. But I'm also glad they didn't do that, because I don't think that would have really worked with this episode. So it's revealed that the Barber isn't actually any of these gods that he claimed to be. He was just responsible for passing on their stories and legends using the Nexus, which then became self-sustaining, meaning the gods didn't have any need for him anymore. So he's obviously angry at the gods for not giving him credit for his work and just kind of casting him out, and therefore his whole plan is to try and cut them off by, I think, ascending to the throne, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Now, this moment is probably my least favourite part of the episode, not because I think that the reveal or his true identity isn't a good one, but because in an episode that is already very exposition heavy, within the space of about 5 minutes, we get the reveal that the Barber is the god known as Anansi or Loki, etc. He's the personification of these gods. Then we get the reveal that he actually isn't the personification of these gods. Then we get the reveal of the Barber's true identity, and then we get the reveal of Abby's true identity. And like I said, that happens all in the space of about 5 minutes, so it just feels very exposition heavy and a little bit rushed. Obviously, from the very beginning of the episode, it's shown that the Doctor recognises this woman that's in the barbershop, Abby, but isn't sure at first why he recognises her. So this is then revealed that it's because he previously met her as the Fugitive Doctor, which of course he doesn't really have any memories of, but that does kind of beg the question how he does eventually remember her. I guess just seeing her brought back that particular memory or something like that, but he does also have a memory of purposely losing a bet to Anansi so that he didn't have to marry Anansi's daughter, who this is, which I assume also obviously happened whilst he was the Fugitive Doctor. So although her cameo does feel a bit random and brings up those questions, it does actually make sense for her to be in this particular episode, in my opinion, as it would be wrong to mention at the start of this episode that this is the first time the Doctor has been black without mentioning that they have been black before, albeit in an incarnation that they have little to no memory of. Although this, I can imagine, would be confusing for new viewers who have just been told that 15 is the first black Doctor at the start of this episode. Although with that being said, he does say it's his first time in this black body, not his first time being black in general. So before all this, Belinda returns after running through the market with a cameo from Inua Ellams, which was a nice moment, but it felt a little bit out of place from the rest of the episode. But I guess it was nice to be somewhere else besides the barbershop for a bit of the episode. After the reveal I mentioned earlier, Belinda gives some words of wisdom to Abby.
Hurt people hurt people.
Oh, that's nice. I always say make people cry, but yours includes the people who don't want to give you the satisfaction.
Leading to Abby giving the Doctor a map to the engine room through braids in his hair, which is a nice way to show some African culture and history with the origins of braids during slavery, which I'm sure a lot of people weren't aware of, so that's a nice little kind of history lesson in this episode to teach some viewers about other cultures, if that's something they weren't already aware of. And obviously the Doctor and Belinda get into the engine room and start destroying some of the engine so that the Doctor can overload the engine with his stories about his life and experience and knowledge, which is a very common ending for Doctor Who, with flashbacks from his previous lives and adventures. However, I think it works well for this particular episode, given its focus on stories and storytelling. I think it just works well for the themes of this episode this time, whereas he's done this before in episodes that aren't really about that. And it's also quite a meta moment due to the show being almost never ending and always being able to continue and tell new stories, particularly with the Doctor's 6-word story, I'm born, I die, I'm born, which is just very reminiscent of the show as a whole. And we also get a weird little cameo with that child that Belinda sees being the same actor who played Captain Poppy in Space Babies, and also being credited as Poppy in this episode. Obviously this could be due to the Doctor's explanation of this particular moment with the stories leaking through. I guess we can assume when the Doctor was connected to the engine, it kind of obviously already had all his stories connected to it as well, and this could be a bit of Space Babies leaking through into the real world, or this could be something hinting at the finale, which I've heard a lot of people speculating it could be. So let me know what you think that's about in the comments down below. So overall, the story in the engine is an episode that I went into with quite high expectations, and I think because of that I was expecting a little bit more from it. It's a very wordy, exposition heavy and complex bottle episode with not that much action, and although I personally understood what was going on for the most part, I can understand why a lot of people didn't understand what really was going on in this episode. But with all that being said, I still quite liked this episode, and it's still up there as one of my favourites of this season. It's just not my favourite episode of the season so far like I was hoping it would be. I know a lot of people are very excited for next week's episode. It's meant to be the biggest episode of the show so far apparently, and a lot of people really like Eurovision. For me personally, I've not really been that excited for it. I'm not a Eurovision fan and it doesn't really look like my kind of episode, but now that we know it's going to have some die-hard influence and it's likely going to lead directly into the finale, I'm more intrigued to see how it goes from here. But let me know what you thought about this episode, the story and the engine in the comments down below, and let me know, are you excited for next week or not? And before this video ends, I'd just like to give a shout out to my patrons JB, Tom Baker, Lewis, Andy Collin, flippredd, theunquest, James Box, Oliver Underwood, TheBeastBoss, and LukeN.B.N. These are all free members who, along with getting their names read out here, also get some behind the scenes updates such as thumbnail previews and a free monthly newsletter. To get your name read out at the start of videos, as well as getting early access to videos and exclusive content, you can join as a paid member. And in celebration of Doctor Who Season 2, I'm currently running a 50% discount off your first month on any tier if you use code Season2. I'll make sure to have my Patreon linked in the description down below. So subscribe to the channel and thanks for watching.